The gunshot echoed through the alley like a crack of thunder. Zara Kim dropped the trash bag she was holding and froze. Her heart slammed against her ribs as she pressed her back against the brick wall of the café. The street light above her flickered once and then died completely. Darkness swallowed everything except for the thin slice of yellow light spilling from the café's back door. She should have run inside. She should have locked the door and called the police. But something stopped her. A sound. Low and wet and desperate. Someone was hurt. Zara's nursing instincts kicked in before her common sense could catch up. She edged toward the sound and her sneakers splashed through something warm. When she looked down, she saw blood pooling across the cracked pavement. Her breath caught in her throat. A man lay crumpled against the dumpster. His white shirt was soaked red and his breathing came in shallow gasps. His hand pressed against his side, but blood leaked through his fingers in steady pulses. He was going to die if someone did not help him right now. Zara dropped to her knees beside him without thinking. She pressed her hands over his wound and applied pressure. The man's eyes flew open and he grabbed her wrist with shocking strength. His grip was like iron and his eyes were the coldest shade of gray she had ever seen. They locked onto hers with an intensity that made her forget how to breathe. "Let go of me," he rasped. His voice was rough but commanding even in his weakened state. "You are bleeding out," Zara shot back. She did not let up the pressure. "Stop being stupid and let me help you." His grip loosened slightly. He studied her face like he was trying to memorize every detail. Then his hand fell away and his head dropped back against the dumpster. He passed out. Zara worked fast. She ripped open his shirt and exposed the bullet wound just below his ribs. It was bad but not fatal if she could stop the bleeding. She yanked off her apron and pressed it against the wound. Her hands moved on autopilot as she applied everything she had learned in her 2 years of med school before she dropped out. She did not notice the tattoo at first. He was too focused on keeping him alive. But when she shifted her position to get better leverage, the torn fabric of his shirt fell away completely. A massive black serpent coiled across his chest and wrapped around his heart. The detail was stunning. The scales looked almost real. But it was the symbol in the center that made her blood run cold. A V made of daggers with a crown above it. She had seen that symbol before. Everyone in the city had. It belonged to the Kang family. The most powerful and most feared Mafia family in the entire state. Zara's hands trembled but she did not stop. She could process what this meant later. Right now she just needed to keep him breathing. It took 20 minutes before the bleeding slowed enough for her to feel like he might actually survive. She sat back on her heels and wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. Her arms ached and her knees were soaked with blood. The man was still unconscious but his breathing had evened out. He should call an ambulance. He should call the police. But something told her that would be the worst possible decision. Men like this did not go to hospitals. They disappeared into back rooms with private doctors who did not ask questions. Zara stood up slowly. Her legs felt like jelly. She looked down at the stranger and wondered who he was. Wondered what he had done to end up bleeding in an alley behind her cafe. Wondered if saving him was the biggest mistake of her life. She turned to go back inside and call someone. Anyone. But before she could take a step she heard the growl of engines. Multiple cars screeched to a halt at the mouth of the alley. Car doors slammed and footsteps pounded toward her. Men in black suits appeared from the shadows. They moved with military precision and surrounded her before she could even think about running. One of them stepped forward. He was older with silver hair and a scar running down his left cheek. "Step away from him," the man ordered. His hand rested on the gun holstered at his hip. Zara raised her hands slowly. "He needs a doctor. I stopped the bleeding but he needs proper medical attention." The silver-haired man's eyes narrowed. He looked past her at the unconscious man and his expression shifted from suspicion to alarm. He snapped his fingers and 2 men rushed forward. They lifted the wounded man as carefully as they could and carried him toward one of the waiting cars. "You saw his face," the silver-haired man said. It was not a question. Zara nodded. Her mouth was too dry to speak. "You saw his tattoo." She nodded again. The man studied her for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. He spoke in rapid Italian that Zara could not follow. When he hung up he looked at her again. "What is your name?" "Zara Kim." "Zara Kim." He repeated it like he was filing it away for later. "You just saved the life of Kang Min-joon." That makes you either very brave or very stupid. Maybe both. Zara's stomach dropped. Kang Min-joon. She had heard that name whispered in the same breath as words like ruthless and untouchable and devil. He was the head of the Kang family. The man who controlled half the city's underground. The man politicians feared and rival families did not dare cross. And she had just seen him at his most vulnerable. I was just trying to help, Zara said quietly. Good intentions do not matter in our world, the silver-haired man replied. You have seen too much. That means you are either with us or you are a liability. Before Zara could respond, the man gestured to one of his associates. Take her home. Make sure she does not talk to anyone. Someone will be in touch. Two men stepped forward and each took one of her arms. They were not rough, but their grip made it clear she had no choice. They escorted her to one of the black cars and put her in the back seat. The door closed with a heavy thunk and the locks engaged automatically. Zara pressed her forehead against the cool window and tried to steady her breathing. What had she just done? Her quiet, predictable life had just taken a sharp turn into territory she did not understand and could not control. The car pulled away from the alley and headed toward her apartment across town. She watched the city lights blur past and wondered if she would ever feel safe again. If you are hooked, already hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what country you are watching from. This story is about to get wild. Zara did not sleep that night. She sat on her couch and stared at the door and waited for something terrible to happen. Every sound in the hallway made her jump. Every car that passed outside made her heart race. But nothing happened. The night stretched on in agonizing silence. By the time the sun came up, she had convinced herself that maybe she had overreacted. Maybe the Kang family would just forget about her. Maybe she could go back to her normal life and pretend none of this had ever happened. He was wrong. The knock on her door came at exactly 8 in the morning. 3 sharp raps that sounded like a judge's gavel. Zara jumped off the couch and her coffee mug slipped from her hand. It shattered on the floor and sent ceramic shards skittering across the tile. A man in a black suit stood in the hallway. He was not the silver-haired man from last night, but he had the same cold professional demeanor. Behind him she could see 2 more men standing guard. Miss Kim, the man called through the door. Please open up. Mr. Kang would like to speak with you. Zara's hand trembled as she unlocked the door and opened it just a crack. I already told your people everything I know. I did not see anything. I will not say anything. The man's expression did not change. Mr. Kang insists. The car is waiting downstairs. And if I refuse? Then I am instructed to bring you anyway. But I would prefer to do this the easy way. Zara looked past him at the 2 guards. They stood with their hands folded in front of them, but she could see the bulges under their jackets where their guns rested. He was not stupid. She knew she did not actually have a choice. Let me get my shoes, she said quietly. 10 minutes later she was sitting in the back of another black car. This one was even more luxurious than the one from last night. The leather seats were soft and the interior smelled like expensive cologne. Classical music played softly through the speakers. It was surreal. They drove through the city and away from her neighborhood. The buildings grew taller and more elegant. They passed through areas Zara had only ever seen in magazines. Old money neighborhoods where every house looked like a mansion and every car cost more than she made in 5 years. The car finally pulled through a set of massive iron gates and up a long driveway lined with perfectly manicured hedges. At the end of the drive sat a house that could only be described as an estate. It was 3 stories of white stone and dark windows and architectural beauty that looked like it belonged in Europe rather than the middle of an American city. The car stopped at the front entrance and one of the guards opened her door. Zara stepped out and looked up at the house. Her mouth went dry. This way, the guard said. He gestured toward the front door. Inside was even more impressive. The foyer had marble floors and a crystal chandelier that probably cost more than her entire apartment building. Original paintings hung on the walls and fresh flowers sat in vases on antique tables. Everything screamed wealth and power. They led her through the house and down a long hallway. At the end was a set of double doors made of dark wood. The guard knocked once and then pushed the doors open. Miss Kim is here, sir, he announced. Zara stepped into what appeared to be a private study. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 2 walls. A massive desk sat near the windows and behind it stood the man she had saved last night. Kang Min-joon looked completely different in the daylight. He was tall and broad-shouldered and moved with the controlled grace of a predator. His dark hair was perfectly styled and his suit probably cost more than her car. But it was his eyes that caught her attention. Those same cold gray eyes that had locked onto hers in the alley. They studied her now with the same intensity, but this time there was something else there too. Something she could not quite identify. "Leave us," June said without looking at the guard. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Zara stood frozen in the middle of the room and tried not to show how terrified she was. June moved around the desk and leaned against it. He crossed his arms over his chest and the movement made his suit jacket pull tight across his shoulders. Zara could see the edge of the serpent tattoo peeking out from under his collar. "You saved my life," he said. His voice was different than she remembered. Stronger. More controlled. "That puts me in a very unusual position." "I was just doing what anyone would do," Zara replied. She forced herself to meet his eyes. "No. Most people would have run. Most people would have called the police. You stayed. You helped. Why?" "Because you were dying." She said it like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "I could not just walk away." June's expression did not change, but something flickered in his eyes. "You are either incredibly naive or incredibly stupid." "So I have been told." A ghost of a smile touched his lips, but it disappeared as quickly as it came. "You saw my tattoo?" Zara nodded. "I did." "Do you know what that means?" "It means you are someone important. Someone powerful. Someone I probably should not have seen bleeding in an alley. It means you know too much." June pushed off the desk and stepped closer to her. Zara forced herself not to back away. "In my world, people who know too much do not live very long. They become liabilities. And liabilities get eliminated." Zara's heart hammered in her chest, but she kept her voice steady. "Are you going to kill me?" "I have not decided yet." The silence stretched between them. Zara realized she was holding her breath. She forced herself to breathe normally even though every instinct screamed at her to run. "I could have let you die," she said quietly. "But I did not. Does that count for anything?" June stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned and walked back to his desk. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey from a crystal decanter and held one out to her. Zara crossed the room and took the glass. Their fingers brushed and she felt a jolt of electricity shoot up her arm. June's eyes locked onto hers and she saw something flicker there. Recognition maybe. Or curiosity. "I owe you a life debt," June said. He took a sip of his whiskey and never broke eye contact. "That is not something I give lightly. But it also does not change the fact that you are a security risk." "So what happens now?" "Now you have 2 choices. Option 1 is you disappear. I give you money and a new identity and you leave the city. You never come back and you never speak about what you saw. Option 2 is you stay under my protection. You live here. You work for me. And you never leave my sight." Zara's stomach twisted. "Those are not really choices." "No. They are not. But they are the best I can offer." She looked down at the whiskey in her hand. The amber liquid caught the light and threw golden reflections across her fingers. Everything in her life had been leading to this moment even though she had not known it. Every decision. Every mistake. Every step had brought her to this room and this man and this impossible choice. "What does staying under your protection actually mean?" she asked. "It means you live here in this house. It means you go where I go. It means people will see you with me and they will assume you belong to me. It means you will be watched and guarded and protected but also trapped. You will be safe but you will not be free. And if I choose to disappear? Then you will never see your family again. Never see your friends. Never return to the life you know. You will be alone." Zara thought about her mother who still lived in the same small house where Zara had grown up. She thought about her younger brother who was still in college. She thought about the café and the regulars who came in every morning for their coffee. She thought about the life she had built even if it was not the life she had originally planned. "I will stay," she said quietly. June's expression did not change, but she saw something shift in his eyes. "You are making a mistake." "Maybe. But it is my mistake to make." He finished his whiskey and set the glass down on the desk with a sharp clink. "Then it is decided. You will move in today. Someone will collect your things from your apartment. You will have a room in the East Wing and a guard will be assigned to you. You will not leave the property without my permission. You will not speak to anyone outside this house without my approval. And you will tell no one about what you saw last night. Do you understand?" Zara nodded. Her hands were shaking, so she set her own glass down before she dropped it. "One more thing," June said. He stepped closer to her again, and this time she did back up a step. He noticed but did not comment. "You will learn very quickly that my world is not like yours. People here do not trust easily. They do not forgive mistakes. And they do not show mercy. If you want to survive, you will need to be smarter and stronger than you have ever been before. Can you do that?" Zara lifted her chin and met his eyes. "I guess we will find out." For the first time since she had entered the room, June smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the kind of smile a wolf gives before it strikes. But there was something else there too. Something that looked almost like respect. "Yes," he said softly. "I suppose we will. Before you keep watching, hit that subscribe button. You do not want to miss what happens next. Trust me." Zara's new life began that same afternoon. Her apartment was emptied within hours, and her belongings arrived at the Kang estate in neat boxes. She was given a room on the second floor of the East Wing. It was bigger than her entire apartment had been. The bed was king-sized with silk sheets and more pillows than any one person could possibly need. The bathroom had a soaking tub and a shower with multiple heads. The closet was walk-in and already stocked with clothes in her size. It should have felt like a dream. Instead, it felt like a very beautiful prison. A woman named Mrs. Song was assigned to help her settle in. Mrs. Song was in her 50s with kind eyes and gray-streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun. She explained the house rules as she unpacked Zara's boxes. No leaving the property without permission. No phone calls without approval. No visitors unless cleared by security. Breakfast was served at 7. Dinner was at 8. June expected punctuality. "He is not as bad as people think," Mrs. Song said as she hung Zara's clothes in the closet. Most of them looked shabby next to the expensive designer pieces already hanging there. "He is just careful. He has to be." "Has he always been like this?" Zara asked. She sat on the edge of the massive bed and watched Mrs. Song work. "For as long as I have known him. But I have only worked here for 10 years. Before that I could not say." "What happened 10 years ago?" Mrs. Song paused and glanced toward the door like she was checking to make sure they were alone. "His family was killed. His father. His mother. His younger sister. They were murdered in this house. June was the only one who survived. He was 22 years old and suddenly he was responsible for everything. The family. The business. The empire. He had to become hard or he would not have survived." Zara's chest tightened. She had known June was dangerous, but she had not thought about what might have made him that way. How did he survive when the rest of them did not? He was not home that night. He was out handling business. When he came back, he found them. All of them. Some people say it broke something inside him. Made him into the man he is now. "Do they know who did it?" Mrs. Song's expression darkened. "The Wei family. But nothing was ever proven. The bodies were found but the evidence disappeared. Witnesses refused to talk. It was a perfect crime. And June has spent the last 10 years building his power so that nothing like that can ever happen again." Zara absorbed this information in silence. He had thought of June as a monster. As someone who chose violence and control because that was just who he was. But maybe it was more complicated than that. Maybe he was a man who had lost everything and learned that the only way to protect what was left was to become untouchable. Mrs. Song finished unpacking and turned to face Zara. "I know this is not what you wanted. But if you are going to be here, you should understand something. June does not let people get close. He does not trust easily. And he definitely does not care about anyone outside his inner circle. But he does keep his word. If he has promised to protect you, then you are safer here than you would be anywhere else in this city. Remember that." She left and Zara was alone. She walked to the window and looked out at the grounds. The estate was surrounded by walls and guards patrolled the perimeter. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. That night Zara dressed for dinner in one of the expensive dresses she had found in the closet. It was simple and black and fit her perfectly. Someone had known her size and her taste. The thought made her uncomfortable. She made her way downstairs following the path Mrs. Song had shown her earlier. The dining room was on the first floor near the back of the house. It was an enormous space with a table that could easily seat 20 people. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling and the walls were decorated with more original art. June was already there. He stood near the windows with a glass of wine in his hand and stared out at the darkening sky. He was still wearing a suit, but he had taken off his jacket and loosened his tie. He looked more relaxed than he had that morning, but no less dangerous. "You are on time," he said without turning around. "Good." Zara stepped into the room and closed the door behind her. Was there any doubt? There is always doubt. He turned to face her and his eyes swept over her from head to toe. Something flickered in his expression, but it was gone before she could identify it. "The dress suits you." "Thank you." They sat at opposite ends of the long table and staff brought out course after course of food Zara could not have named if her life depended on it. Everything was rich and perfectly prepared and utterly foreign to her. She had grown up on simple home-cooked meals. This felt like eating at a museum. Joon watched her throughout the meal. He did not speak much, but his eyes never left her for long. It was unnerving and oddly intimate at the same time. "You are uncomfortable," he observed halfway through the main course. "Is it that obvious? You have not relaxed since you sat down. Your shoulders are tense and you keep glancing at the door like you expect someone to burst through it." Zara set down her fork. "Can you blame me? Yesterday I was serving coffee and worrying about my student loans. Today I am living in a mansion with a man who could have me killed with a phone call. It is a bit of an adjustment." "Fair enough." Joon took a sip of his wine. "But you should know that I do not make a habit of killing people without reason. You are safe here as long as you follow the rules. And if I break them? Then we will have a problem." As a weakness to exploit. "Inside these walls you are untouchable. Outside them you are a target. So yes, you are my responsibility. And I take my responsibilities very seriously." Zara wanted to argue, but she could not find the words. Because as much as she hated to admit it, he was right. She had seen his toe. She had saved his life. In doing so she had tied herself to him in a way that could not be undone. "How long?" she asked. "How long do I have to stay here?" "Until it is safe for you to leave." "And when will that be?" "I do not know." The honest answer was somehow worse than any lie would have been. Zara looked down at her plate and felt the weight of her new reality settle over her like a heavy blanket. This was her life now. For how long she could not say. But for now she belonged to Kang Min-joon whether she wanted to or not. After dinner Joon excused himself to handle business and Zara was free to explore the house. She wandered through the halls and tried to memorize the layout. The house was enormous and beautifully decorated, but it felt empty. There were no personal touches. No family photos. No signs that anyone actually lived here beyond the staff. She found herself in the library on the second floor. It was a smaller, more intimate space than the study where she had first met Joon. The walls were lined with books and a fireplace crackled softly in the corner. Leather chairs sat arranged near the fire and a decanter of whiskey waited on a side table. Zara pulled a book from the shelf at random and curled up in one of the chairs. She did not even look at the title. She just needed something to focus on besides the surreal turn her life had taken. She did not know how long she sat there before she heard footsteps in the hallway. The door opened and Joon stepped inside. He paused when he saw her and something flickered across his face. "Surprise maybe. I did not expect anyone to be in here," he said. "I can leave if you want privacy." "No. Stay." He crossed the room and poured himself a drink. Then he sat in the chair opposite hers and stretched his legs toward the fire. "Do you read often?" "When I have time. I used to read a lot in college before I dropped out." "Why did you drop out?" Zara hesitated. No one ever asked her that question. They usually just assumed she had failed or could not handle the pressure. "My father died. He had cancer and the medical bills bankrupted us. I had to leave school and get a job to help support my family. Med school was expensive and there was no way to make it work." Joon was quiet for a moment. "You wanted to be a doctor." "I wanted to help people. Medicine seemed like the best way to do that. But life had other plans." "Do you regret it?" "Every day." The admission surprised her. She had never said that out loud before. "But regret does not pay the bills or put food on the table. So I moved on." "You could go back now." "I could arrange it." Zara looked at him sharply. "What?" "If you stay under my protection I will make sure your family is taken care of. Your mother. Your brother. They will want for nothing. And when this is over you can return to med school if that is what you want. I will pay for it." The offer was so unexpected that Zara did not know how to respond. "Why would you do that?" "Because you saved my life. And because I do not like being in debt." "I do not want your charity." It is not charity. It is payment. June met her eyes and she saw something there she had not seen before. Sincerity maybe. Or perhaps something closer to guilt. You did not ask to be brought into this world, Zara. You were just trying to help someone. The least I can do is make sure you do not suffer for it. Zara's throat tightened. She had spent so long being angry at the world for taking away her dreams. But here was this dangerous, complicated man offering to give them back to her. It should have felt wrong. It should have felt like a trap. But instead it felt like hope. Thank you, she whispered. June nodded and turned his attention to the fire. They sat in silence for a while and it was surprisingly comfortable. The only sounds were the crackling logs and the occasional turn of a page. Can I ask you something? Zara said eventually. You can ask. I may not answer. Why do you live like this? Alone in this huge house with only staff and guards for company. Does it not get lonely? June's jaw tightened. Loneliness is safer than attachment. People you care about become liabilities. They become targets. I learned that lesson a long time ago and I do not intend to repeat that mistake. But is that really living? Just surviving and keeping everyone at arm's length. It is the only way to survive in my world. Zara wanted to argue but she could see the pain behind his eyes. The walls he had built to protect himself. And she realized that in some ways June was just as trapped as she was. Maybe even more so. Drop a comment and let me know what you think of June so far. Is he a villain or is there more to him than meets the eye? The next few weeks passed in a strange sort of routine. Zara adapted to life at the estate faster than she expected. She woke early and had breakfast with June when he was available. She spent her days reading in the library or walking the grounds under the watchful eyes of her guards. She had dinner with June most evenings and they talked about everything and nothing. Slowly Zara began to see past the cold exterior June showed the world. He was intelligent and well-read. He had opinions on art and literature and philosophy. He could be funny in a dry, sarcastic way that caught her off guard. And sometimes when he thought she was not looking, she caught him watching her with an expression she could not quite name. She also began to understand the weight he carried. Late at night she would hear him pacing in his study. She saw the shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. She noticed the way his jaw tightened when certain names were mentioned. Kang Min-joon might be the most powerful man in the city, but he was also the most burdened. One evening Zara found herself unable to sleep. She wandered downstairs and heard voices coming from June's study. The door was slightly ajar and she could see him inside with the silver-haired man she had met the night he was shot. The Wei family is making moves again, the silver-haired man was saying. His name was Park Jin-won and he was June's second in command. They have been buying up property on the east side and making alliances with some of our smaller partners. They are testing us. Let them test, June replied. His voice was cold and hard. The Weiss have been trying to undermine us for 10 years. They will fail just like they always do. What if they do not fail this time? What if they are stronger than we think? Then we will remind them why they should fear the Kang name. Zara backed away from the door before they could notice her. Her heart was pounding. She had known June was involved in dangerous business, but hearing him talk about it so casually was jarring. This was the real June. The one who made decisions that affected lives and deaths. The one who ruled through fear and power. She made it back to her room and climbed into bed, but sleep did not come. She lay awake and thought about the man downstairs. The man who had saved her in his own twisted way. The man who was slowly becoming more than just her captor. It was dangerous to think of him like that. Dangerous to let herself care about someone who lived in a world of violence and betrayal. But she could not help it. There was something magnetic about June. Something broken and beautiful and utterly compelling. The next morning Zara woke to find a package waiting outside her door. Inside was a new cell phone and a note in June's precise handwriting. Your family has been asking about you. You may call them, but all conversations will be monitored. Do not tell them where you are or who you are with. Tell them you have taken a new job that requires you to travel. Make them believe you are safe and happy. This is not optional. Zara stared at the note for a long time. Then she picked up the phone and called her mother. Her mother cried when she heard Zara's voice. She had been so worried. Zara had disappeared without warning and had not answered any calls or texts. Where had she been? What had happened? Zara lied. She told her mother she had been offered an incredible opportunity to work as a private nurse for a wealthy family. The job paid extremely well and came with room and board, but it required her to be on call at all hours. That was why she had not been able to contact anyone. She was sorry for worrying her. Everything was fine. Her mother believed her. Or at least she pretended to. They talked for 20 minutes and Zara ached with how much she missed her. When they finally hung up, Zara sat on her bed and cried. She hated lying to her family. Hated that her new life required her to keep so many secrets. But she also knew that June was right. The less her family knew, the safer they would be. That evening at dinner, June asked her how the call had gone. Zara told him it had been fine and did not elaborate. He did not push. "I have something for you," June said instead. He pulled a small box from his pocket and slid it across the table. Zara opened it carefully. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a small pendant in the shape of a serpent. It was beautiful and clearly expensive. It also looked very similar to the tattoo on June's chest. "What is this?" she asked. "Protection. If you are going to be seen with me, people need to know you are under my protection. That necklace carries my mark. Anyone in this world will recognize it, and they will know that hurting you means answering to me." Zara lifted the necklace from the box and held it up to the light. The serpent's eyes were tiny rubies that caught the candlelight and glowed like embers. "Put it on," June said quietly. Zara hesitated. Wearing this necklace meant accepting her place in his world. It meant acknowledging that she belonged to him in a way that went beyond their arrangement. But it also meant safety. It meant no one would dare touch her. She fastened the necklace around her throat. The metal was warm against her skin. June's eyes darkened as he looked at her. "Beautiful." The word hung between them. Zara felt heat rise to her cheeks and she looked down at her plate. The air in the room had changed. Something had shifted. Over the following days, Zara noticed people treating her differently. The guards nodded to her with respect. Mrs. Song smiled more. Even Park Jin-won acknowledged her presence with something that might have been approval. She also noticed June watching her more intently. His eyes would linger on the necklace at her throat. Sometimes she caught him staring at her when he thought she was not looking. And sometimes when they passed each other in the hallway, his hand would brush against hers and electricity would spark between them. Zara told herself it meant nothing. That she was just reading too much into simple gestures. But deep down she knew better. Something was growing between them. Something dangerous and inevitable. One night Zara was reading in the library when June entered. He looked exhausted. His tie was gone and his shirt was partially unbuttoned. His hair was disheveled like he had been running his hands through it. "Bad day?" Zara asked. "You could say that." June poured himself a drink and downed it in one swallow. Then he poured another and brought it to where Zara sat. He dropped into the chair beside her instead of sitting across from her like he usually did. They were close. Close enough that she could smell his cologne. Close enough that she could see the faint scar above his left eyebrow. "Do you want to talk about it?" she asked. "No." "Do you want me to leave?" "No." They sat in silence. June closed his eyes and leaned his head back against the chair. Zara watched him and felt something twist in her chest. He looked vulnerable like this. Human. Not the untouchable mob boss, but just a man who carried too much weight. "Why do you do this?" Zara asked softly. "Why keep living this life if it causes you so much pain?" June opened his eyes and looked at her. "Because it is all I have left. My family built this empire over 3 generations. My grandfather started with nothing and turned it into something powerful. My father expanded it and made us untouchable. And then they were taken from me in one night. If I walk away, then everything they built dies with them. Their legacy becomes nothing. I cannot let that happen. Even if it destroys you in the process. I am already destroyed, Zara. I have been since the night I found them. Now I am just making sure their deaths were not in vain." The raw honesty in his voice made Zara's breath catch. She reached out without thinking and placed her hand over his. June looked down at their joined hands like he had forgotten what human touch felt like. "You are not destroyed," Zara said quietly. "You are still here. You are still fighting. That means something." June turned his hand over and laced his fingers through hers. His grip was warm and strong and sent shivers up her arm. "You see things in me that are not there. Or maybe I see things you have forgotten existed." They stared at each other. The air between them felt charged with something Zara could not name. June's eyes dropped to her lips and lingered there. Her heart hammered in her chest. He was going to kiss her. He could feel it. And God help her, she wanted him to. But at the last second June pulled away. He stood abruptly and crossed to the window. He shoved his hands in his pockets and his shoulders were rigid. You should go to bed, he said. His voice was rough. It is late. Zara stood slowly. She felt off balance, like the ground had shifted beneath her feet. June. Good night, Zara. It was a dismissal. Zara left the library with her heart still racing and her hand still tingling from where he had held it. She made it back to her room and closed the door behind her. Then she leaned against it and tried to catch her breath. What was happening to her? She was falling for him. For a man who lived in shadows and violence. For a man who had essentially made her his prisoner. It was insane. It was dangerous. It was inevitable. The next morning Zara woke to shouting. She bolted out of bed and ran to her door. Guards were rushing through the hallway. She grabbed one of them as he passed. What is happening? Stay in your room, Miss Kim. Lock the door and do not come out until someone comes for you. Before she could ask more questions, he was gone. Zara stood in her doorway and listened to the chaos erupting throughout the house. More shouting. Running footsteps. And then she heard it. Gunshots. Terror flooded through her. Zara slammed her door shut and locked it. She backed away and looked around for somewhere to hide. The closet maybe. Or under the bed. But before she could move, the door burst open. 3 men in black tactical gear stormed into her room. They were not June's men. Zara could tell by the red bandana one of them wore. Red was the Wei family color. Zara Kim, one of them said. His voice was muffled behind his mask. You are coming with us. No. Zara backed toward the window. Stay away from me. Do not make this difficult. One of them lunged forward and grabbed her arm. Zara screamed and fought. She clawed at his face and managed to knock his mask askew. But there were 3 of them and only one of her. They overpowered her quickly. Someone pressed a cloth over her mouth and nose. The smell was chemical and sweet. Zara tried to hold her breath, but her lungs burned. She gasped and inhaled the fumes. The room spun. Her legs gave out. The last thing she heard before everything went black was more gunshots and someone screaming June's name. If you loved that, hit the like button and subscribe because part 2 is going to blow your mind.